My mother-in-law said at the hospital after I gave birth, "That baby looks nothing like our family. She definitely cheated on my son. Look at it, absolutely obvious to everyone." Nurses heard everything as I lay there exhausted and devastated. My husband just stood there saying nothing. The envelope that arrived at her country club with DNA results and other documents made her resign from every committee in complete disgrace. I was still bleeding when she said it. Still had the 4 in my arm, still couldn't feel my legs completely. "That baby looks nothing like our family." Patricia Whitfield said it loud enough for 3 nurses to hear, staring at my daughter like she was examining a suspicious mole. "She definitely cheated on my son. Look at it. Absolutely obvious to everyone." My husband, the man who'd promised to love and protect me, stood there adjusting his watch. That's when I stopped crying and started thinking. Because women who make accusations that specific, that public, that cruel, they're not just being vicious. They're protecting something. And I had 6 weeks of maternity leave to figure out exactly what. The nurses didn't know where to look. One of them, the younger one with the blonde ponytail, actually stepped between Patricia and my bed like she was preparing to physically intervene. My husband, Daniel, cleared his throat twice but didn't speak. His mother smiled at him, touched his arm and walked out of the room with her purse tucked under her elbow like she'd just finished a pleasant social call. I named my daughter Emma anyway. The name we'd chosen together before his mother decided she wasn't really his. The first week home was a blur of feeding schedules and sleep deprivation. Daniel tiptoed around me, brought me water, changed diapers with excessive focus on the task. He didn't mention what his mother had said. Not once. On day 8 I asked him directly. "Your mother accused me of cheating in front of hospital staff. Are we going to talk about that?" He was folding baby blankets, something he'd never done before in his life. She was emotional. The birth was stressful. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. She said our daughter looks nothing like your family and that I definitely cheated. Which part didn't she mean? She's always been dramatic. You know how she is. He put the blankets in the drawer with unnecessary precision. "Can we not do this right now? You need to rest." I needed a lot of things. Rest wasn't one of them. The paperwork appeared on day 12. I was nursing Emma in the living room when I saw it. A stack of documents on Daniel's desk that he'd left open when he went to take a shower. The tabs were color-coded. Blue, green, yellow. Very organized. Very Daniel. I shouldn't have looked. That's what I told myself as I walked over to the desk with Emma still latched. But women who get accused of infidelity in delivery rooms have already had their privacy violated in the worst possible way. Reading your husband's paperwork felt minor by comparison. The top document was a trust agreement. The Whitfield Family Trust, established 1987. I scanned the first page, then the second. Boring legal language about trustees and beneficiaries and distributions. I was about to walk away when I saw Emma's name. Not Emma specifically, but legitimate grandchildren of Harold and Patricia Whitfield. The word legitimate appeared in bold. The trust would distribute to grandchildren when they turned 25. Equal shares. The current value, according to a statement paperclip to the agreement, was just over $4 million. I stood there with my daughter nursing and did the math. Daniel had one sister, Nicole. If Nicole had kids and Daniel had kids, they'd split it. But if Daniel's kids weren't legitimate, if they'd been fathered by someone else, they'd get nothing. Nicole's kids would get everything. Patricia hadn't been cruel at the hospital. She'd been strategic. I put Emma in her bassinet and photographed every page of that trust agreement with my phone. Then I photographed the bank statements that were underneath it. The trust had accounts at 3 different banks. The balances didn't match the total value listed. Not even close. When Daniel came out of the shower, I was back on the couch nursing Emma like I'd never moved. Sleep deprivation is a special kind of torture. Your brain doesn't work right. Everything feels impossible. But it also creates strange pockets of clarity in the middle of the night when you're awake anyway. I spent those feeding sessions scrolling through the trust documents on my phone, zooming in on numbers, cross-referencing accounts. The trust should have had approximately $4.2 million. The actual accounts held about $3.1 million. The difference wasn't small. It wasn't a market fluctuation or a bad quarter. It was $1.1 million that should have been there and wasn't. Patricia was the trustee. She'd been managing the trust since Harold, Daniel's father, had his first stroke 3 years ago. Harold was still alive but barely involved in anything. Patricia handled all the finances, all the decisions, all the paperwork. I started making notes in my phone at 3 in the morning while Emma slept on my chest. Questions I needed answers to. Who audited the trust? When was the last formal accounting? What were the rules about trustee compensation? Could trustees borrow from the trust? By week 3 I had a working theory. Patricia had been using trust money. Maybe she thought of it as borrowing. Maybe she thought she'd pay it back. Maybe she didn't care. But now there was a grandchild who would eventually inherit. And when Emma turned 25, someone would ask questions about the balance. Questions Patricia couldn't answer. Unless Emma wasn't legitimate. Unless she wasn't really Daniel's daughter. Then the trust could skip that entire branch of the family tree, and no one would ever audit closely enough to find the missing money. The accusation at the hospital hadn't been about me at all. It had been about covering up theft. I needed proof. Not theories, not suspicions. Actual evidence that would hold up when I showed it to people who mattered. I made a list on my phone of what I needed. DNA test proving paternity, trust accounting records, bank statements, communication showing Patricia knew about the discrepancies. The DNA test was easy. I ordered one online that would hold up in court. Full chain of custody, certified results, the whole process. I swabbed Emma while she slept. Daniel swabbed himself one morning when I asked him to, looking confused but not suspicious. He thought I was trying to prove his mother wrong. He wasn't wrong about that. The results came back in 11 days. Probability of paternity, 99.9997%. I saved 3 copies. One in my email, one in a cloud account Patricia didn't know existed, one printed and locked in a safe deposit box I'd opened at a bank across town. The trust records were harder. I couldn't just ask for them without raising questions. But Daniel had access to them, and Daniel's filing system was consistent to the point of obsession. Every document he'd ever been given lived in the home office, organized by category and date. I waited until he took Emma to his parents' house for a Sunday visit. Patricia had been asking to see her granddaughter, playing the wounded grandmother who just wanted to bond with the baby. Daniel thought it would help smooth things over. I encouraged him to go. I said I needed a nap. The second his car pulled out of the driveway, I was in the office. The trust documents were in a locked drawer, but Daniel kept the key in the same place he'd kept it for 6 years. Inside a book on the shelf called Estate Planning Essentials, that he'd never actually read. I photographed everything. Trust agreements, amendments, annual statements going back 8 years, correspondence between Patricia and the trust attorney, distribution schedules, tax filings. It took me 90 minutes. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it and was asleep on the couch when Daniel came home. The statements told the story clearly once you knew what you were looking for. Starting 4 years ago, there were regular transfers out of the trust accounts. 20,000 here, 35,000 there, 50,000 in December 3 years ago. The descriptions were vague. Administrative expenses. Property maintenance. Investment management fees. Except the trust owned no property that required maintenance. And the investment management fees were supposed to be a fixed percentage, not random large withdrawals. These were Patricia pulling money out, probably depositing it into personal accounts and listing fake reasons in the paperwork. I made a spreadsheet. Every questionable withdrawal, the date, the amount, the description. By the time I finished, I'd documented transfers totaling just over $1 million. The exact amount missing from the accounts. But I needed more than my own spreadsheet. I needed someone with actual authority to see it. Someone who would ask the right questions and demand answers Patricia couldn't fake. That's when I thought of Nicole. Daniel's sister was 4 years older than him, sharper than him, and significantly less impressed with their mother. She lived in Boston, worked in finance, and visited maybe 3 times a year. She and Patricia had a relationship best described as coldly polite. I'd never understood why until now. I called her on a Thursday afternoon while Emma napped. "Nicole, it's Megan. Do you have a few minutes to talk about the family trust?" There was a pause. "That's a random question." "Why?" "Because I think your mother has been stealing from it, and when Emma was born, Patricia accused me of cheating to prevent Emma from inheriting. I have documentation. I need to know if you've noticed anything strange." Another pause, longer this time. "Then, what kind of documentation?" I told her everything. The hospital accusation, the trust balance discrepancies, the pattern of withdrawals, the DNA test I'd already completed. I sent her my spreadsheet and photos of the bank statements while we were still on the phone. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said, "My mother told me 5 years ago that the trust wasn't performing well. That we shouldn't expect as much as grandfather originally planned. She said the market had been difficult. The market's been fine. The money's just gone. I'm going to need to see the original trust documents. All of them. And I'm going to need to talk to the attorney who drafted them. I can get you both. But Nicole, I need you to understand what I'm asking. If we pursue this, it's going to destroy your mother." "Good," Nicole said. "Because if you're right, she was planning to destroy your daughter's inheritance to cover up her own theft. I'm not protecting that." The attorney who drafted the trust was named Bernard Fletcher. He was 71 years old and still practicing, mostly because he'd been handling the Whitfield family finances for 40 years and didn't trust anyone else to do it properly. Nicole called him directly and asked for a meeting to discuss the trust accounting. He suggested we come to his office the following Tuesday. Nicole flew down from Boston. I brought Emma because I was still nursing and couldn't leave her for more than 2 hours. Daniel thought I was taking Emma to a pediatrician appointment. I didn't correct him. Bernard's office smelled like old paper and furniture polish. He had photos of grandchildren on his desk and a painting of a golden retriever on the wall. He looked at Emma sleeping in her carrier and smiled. "Beautiful baby. She looks just like Daniel did at that age." I didn't respond to that. Nicole placed a folder on his desk. "We need you to review the trust accounting. Specifically, we have questions about withdrawals over the past 4 years." Bernard's smile faded. He opened the folder and started reading. His expression didn't change much, but his jaw got tighter. After 10 minutes he looked up. "Where did you get these bank statements?" "From the trust records," Nicole said. "Are they inaccurate?" "No. They're accurate. That's the problem." He removed his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth from his pocket. "As trustee, Patricia is required to provide annual accountings to the beneficiaries. Have you been receiving those?" "I received a summary last year," Nicole said. "It didn't include this level of detail." "It should have." He put his glasses back on. "These transfers are not properly documented. Administrative expenses require receipts. Property maintenance requires invoices. Investment management fees should match the agreement with the investment firm, which charges 0.5% quarterly, not random 5-figure sums." "So what does that mean?" I asked. He looked at me directly. "It means Patricia has been removing funds from the trust without proper authorization or documentation. At minimum, that's a breach of fiduciary duty. At maximum, it's embezzlement." He closed the folder. "I need to see the complete trust records. Everything. And then I need to make a phone call to your father." Harold Whitfield still lived in the house where Daniel and Nicole had grown up. Big colonial in an old neighborhood, professionally landscaped, worth at least $800,000. Patricia had wanted to sell it after his second stroke, but Harold refused to move. He couldn't manage the stairs anymore, so they'd converted the study into a bedroom. Patricia stayed in the master bedroom upstairs. They lived in the same house like roommates who barely spoke. Bernard called Harold directly, explained that there were concerns about the trust accounting, and asked if we could meet. Harold said yes immediately. Patricia wasn't home. She was at her book club, the one she hosted every other Thursday and took extremely seriously. Harold was in his wheelchair in the converted study when we arrived. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, but his eyes were still sharp. He looked at Emma and then at me. "Daniel's daughter?" "Yes." Patricia said there were questions about paternity. Patricia lied. I handed him the DNA test results. He read them slowly, his hand shaking slightly. Then he looked at Bernard. "Show me what she did." Bernard spread the documents across the dining room table. Trust agreements. Bank statements. The spreadsheet I'd made showing every questionable withdrawal. Harold looked at each page, asked questions, took his time. Nicole explained what we'd found, how the amounts didn't match, how the descriptions didn't make sense. When we finished, Harold sat back in his wheelchair and stared at the wall for a long time. Then he said, "How much total?" "Approximately $1.1 million, Bernard said. Harold nodded slowly. "And she accused Megan of infidelity to invalidate Emma's claim to the trust." "That's our belief, yes." He looked at me. I apologize for my wife. And for my son who should have defended you. I didn't know what to say to that. Emma made a small sound in her sleep and I adjusted her blanket. Harold turned to Bernard. What do we do now? We demand a complete accounting. If Patricia can't document where the money went, we file a formal complaint and remove her as trustee. We also involve the other beneficiaries. He glanced at Nicole. This affects everyone who has a claim to the trust. I want a family meeting, Harold said. Everyone. Daniel, Nicole, Patricia. This weekend. I want everyone in this room when we discuss what happens next. Patricia came home at 9:30 that night. I heard her car in the driveway from where I sat feeding Emma in the nursery. Daniel was downstairs watching television. He'd asked me about my day and I'd said it was fine. Emma had slept well, nothing eventful. All true statements that omitted everything that mattered. I heard Patricia's voice downstairs, bright and cheerful. Daniel, honey, is Megan still awake? I brought some groceries for you both. Playing the helpful mother-in-law. Playing the grandmother who just wanted to support her son's family. I didn't go downstairs. Let Daniel handle his mother's performance on his own. The family meeting was scheduled for Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. Harold called Daniel personally to tell him to be there. Your mother and I need to discuss some family business. It's important. Bring Megan and the baby. Daniel looked confused when he told me. Do you know what this is about? No idea, I said. I was getting better at lying to him. It didn't feel as bad as I thought it would. Saturday morning, Daniel was nervous. He kept checking his watch, asking if I knew what his father wanted to talk about. I dressed Emma in a white cotton outfit with small yellow flowers. Patricia liked when Emma looked put together. I wanted Patricia to see exactly what she'd tried to delegitimize. We arrived at Harold's house at 1:45. Nicole was already there, sitting in the living room with a cup of coffee. Patricia wasn't there yet. Harold was in his wheelchair near the fireplace, and Bernard Fletcher sat in one of the wingback chairs with a leather briefcase at his feet. Daniel looked around the room. What's going on? Why is Mr. Fletcher here? We're waiting for your mother, Harold said. Patricia arrived at 2 exactly. She came through the front door with her purse and a shopping bag, smiling. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I stopped to pick up some pastries from that bakery you like, Harold. She saw Bernard and her smile flickered for just a second. Then it came back brighter. Bernard, what a nice surprise. I didn't know you'd be here. Sit down, Patricia, Harold said. She sat on the couch, placed her purse beside her, and looked around the room with an expression of pleasant confusion. This all feels very serious. What's happening? I was holding Emma in my arms, standing near the window. Daniel stood next to me, completely lost. Harold nodded at me. Megan has something to show everyone. I walked to the coffee table and placed a folder down. These are DNA test results. They confirm with 99.9997% certainty that Daniel is Emma's biological father. I looked directly at Patricia. So when you accused me of cheating at the hospital, you were lying. Patricia's face didn't change. I never accused you of cheating. I was concerned about some features that seemed unusual. As a grandmother, I think I'm allowed to. 3 nurses documented your statement. I interrupted. You said I definitely cheated on your son and that it was obvious to everyone. The hospital has an incident report. Daniel turned to his mother. You said it was just stress. That you didn't mean it that way. Patricia looked at him with wide, wounded eyes. Honey, you know I would never. Now we get to the interesting part, Nicole said. She opened her own folder. The trust accounting. Patricia went very still. Bernard leaned forward. Patricia, as trustee of the Whitfield Family Trust, you're required to maintain accurate records and provide annual accountings to beneficiaries. We've reviewed the bank statements from the past 4 years. There are significant discrepancies. Discrepancies. Patricia's voice had gone quiet. $1.1 million in unexplained withdrawals. Nicole slid the spreadsheet across the table. Administrative expenses that don't have receipts. Property maintenance for property the trust doesn't own. Investment management fees that don't match the contracted amounts. Patricia picked up the spreadsheet. Her hand was shaking. These are legitimate expenses. The trust has obligations. Then you'll have documentation, Bernard said. Receipts, invoices, proof of payment. As trustee, you're legally required to maintain those records. We'll need to see them. The room was completely silent. Emma made a small sound and I shifted her to my other arm. Patricia stared at the spreadsheet like it was written in a language she couldn't read. Harold's voice was cold. Where's the money, Patricia? She looked up at him. I don't know what you're talking about. I've managed this trust carefully for 3 years. Every decision I've made has been in the family's best interest. Including accusing your daughter-in-law of infidelity to prevent your granddaughter from inheriting? Nicole's voice was sharp. Because if Emma wasn't legitimate, she wouldn't be entitled to a share of the trust. And no one would audit the accounts closely enough to find the missing $1 million. Daniel finally spoke. Is that true? Did you accuse Megan of cheating because of the trust money? Patricia stood up. I don't have to listen to this. These are baseless accusations from... Sit down, Harold said. His voice wasn't loud, but Patricia sat. Bernard opened his briefcase and removed another folder. I've prepared a formal demand for complete accounting. You have 30 days to provide documentation for every withdrawal made from the trust during your tenure as trustee. If you can't provide that documentation, the beneficiaries have grounds to remove you as trustee and pursue legal action for breach of fiduciary duty. And if the money can't be accounted for, Nicole added, we'll be filing a police report for embezzlement. Patricia's face had gone completely white. She looked at Daniel like she was waiting for him to defend her. Daniel looked at me, at Emma, at the DNA results still sitting on the coffee table. You accused my wife of cheating, he said slowly. In front of nurses. Right after she gave birth. And you did it because you stole from the trust and didn't want anyone to find out. Daniel, I never... Stop. His voice cracked. Just stop. Harold spoke again. I'm filing for divorce, Patricia. I've already spoken to an attorney. You have 1 week to move out of this house. He looked at Bernard. I want Patricia removed as trustee immediately. I want a forensic audit of every account. And I want to know where every dollar went. Patricia grabbed her purse and stood. She looked around the room one more time, her eyes landing on Emma. That baby doesn't look like our family, she said quietly. Then she walked out. Daniel started crying. The forensic audit took 4 months. They found most of the money eventually. Patricia had transferred it to personal accounts, used it to renovate a vacation condo she'd bought in Florida without telling Harold, paid for luxury trips she'd taken with friends, covered credit card bills from shopping sprees in New York and Los Angeles. She'd been living a secret second life funded by money that belonged to her children and grandchildren. Harold's divorce was finalized in 8 months. He kept the house. Patricia kept the Florida condo, which she had to sell immediately to begin paying back the trust. She was removed as trustee and replaced by a professional trust company. The family attorney sent a demand letter requiring her to repay the full amount with interest. She'll be paying it back for years. Daniel and I went to marriage counseling. He cried a lot in those early sessions, apologizing for not defending me at the hospital, for choosing his mother's comfort over my dignity. I told him we could work through it, but I'd never forget the moment he adjusted his watch instead of speaking up. Some things you forgive. You don't forget them. Emma is 8 months old now. She has Daniel's eyes and my nose and her own personality that belongs to no one but herself. Patricia hasn't seen her since that meeting at Harold's house. She sent a birthday card last month that Harold intercepted and threw away. Nicole visits more often now. She brings presents for Emma and apologizes for not seeing what her mother was doing sooner. I never did get an apology from Patricia. Not for the accusation, not for the theft, not for any of it. But I got something better. I got her gone. Out of the trust, out of Harold's life, out of any position where she could hurt people with lies and manipulation. And Emma will get her inheritance when she turns 25. Every dollar of it. Because she's legitimate and loved, and protected by a mother who knows exactly how to fight back when someone tries to take what belongs to her daughter. Patricia was right about one thing. Some of us are willing to play the long game. She just didn't realize I was better at it than she was. What would you have done in that hospital room? Drop a comment with your favorite moment from this story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more revenge stories where patience wins and justice is served ice cold. Which part had you cheering the loudest?